Hey, brother.
Hey, brother. So we've got Christmas coming up, and we've also got New Year's coming up. And because of that, we were actually talking about when Harry met Sally, and you said something funny, which was, "Wow, it'd be funny if they made a sequel called When Harry Divorces Sally."
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
what would that movie look like?
Yes, when Harry divorced Sally. Um, so I guess that would just be it would just be modern day,
Yeah.
uh, Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan. Um, I mean, we could try and do it the same format too, where it's like actual couples,
Yes.
where they're talking about like why they got divorced.
Yeah.
um, I mean, it's still a comedy, right?
Yeah. I think it's still a comedy. It's still a comedy if they maybe either end up getting divorced or not getting divorced, but at the end they end up back together,
Hmm.
right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I
Do
see
they
what you
have
mean.
to end up back together at the end, or do they not end up together at the end? Because you're starting it basically the same way you're starting the first movie, which is they don't like each other anymore. They
Yeah,
don't like each
yeah,
other at the
you're
beginning of
right.
the movie. Now they don't like each other, and then they re-find out why they like each other and why they're perfect for each other. So they kind of like go
Yeah,
back to that, like, you're too anal and you're too just like kind of like loosey goose.
right.
And there's something about that that makes us perfect together, and we forgot that that is what makes us perfect for each other.
Yeah. Well, there is an obvious kind of anchor that we can go with here in
Yes.
whether they end up back together or not. They need to be amicable with each other, and I think that really it's just a matter of them having kids. Um,
Ah.
and so, and it could kind of also be a way of like bringing it back to like New Year's. New Year's was kind of a big thing. New Year's Eve
Yeah.
was kind of a big thing in the first movie.
Yeah.
So it's like coming back to the family for the holidays. Um, and yeah, it could be the the couples that talk to the camera and explain
Yeah.
like how they got married. It's
Yes.
couples explaining like how they continue to make it work even though they're divorced.
Oh, yes.
Where it's like this
Yes.
is what we do for our kids. Like this is how
Yes.
we like remain a family even though we're not married anymore.
It might, yes, it might even be better if it ends with them. They've gone through the divorce, but they've remained friends.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
yes, then it's a story of how do you get, why we went through the divorce and how we met each other and, how it got to that point, and then how we remained friends
Yeah.
after the divorce.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
So
actually
yeah,
not
it
bad.
would almost be like when Harry met Sally in reverse,
Yes.
um, where it's like men and women can't be friends.
Yes. Yes.
It's a line that Billy Crystal says,
Yes.
and this is kind of like you know like ex-husbands and wives can't stay friends.
Yes.
and and it's just like something that he ends up being wrong about, as opposed to the first movie where it's like
Yes.
he kind of
Yeah.
proves himself right by
Yes.
like falling in love with this girl.
Yes. And then yeah,
Um,
and then they can have some funny line where he's like, "Well, it turns out you can be friends with a woman, but she has to be family, kind of like, she's kind of like my sister now." And she's like, "Well, I'm not like your sister." you know,
yeah,
because it's
yeah,
like now cuz now he's broaching that creepy.
yeah, yeah. That's no, that's good. Um,
Where is the I'll have what she's having line going to come into
oh,
this movie?
um, yeah. Oh my gosh, I don't know. I almost feel like I want the movie to
Yeah.
be an exact inverse,
Yes.
um,
Oh,
where
okay. Yeah.
now it's like him kind of saying like, no, like
Yeah.
I could tell when it was real and when you were faking.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
he's like,
Yes.
explaining how, or maybe demonstrating like,
Yes.
what the
Yes.
difference was between like when she
Yes.
would fake it is like when you were doing the eating the
Yes.
sandwich, but when it was real, it was
He's
like
doing
this.
yes, he's doing so there's somewhere like a cruise or there's some restaurant and maybe they're seated with other people.
Yeah, or their
Okay?
kids.
Like their table like Well, I don't know how creepy you want to get with the kids being there while their parents are talking about this stuff, but
Well, they're not like children.
what I'm
They're
saying
gonna
is
be like adult
like
kids.
you could have a scene where like people, like sometimes you go to a restaurant and it's kind of like a communal restaurant and you're seated with other people, so you can kind of get to know other people. Cruise ships do this.
Like Benihana.
Yeah, like Benihana. So they're at Benihana, right?
Yeah.
And like there's people who are kind of like, and they start talking about this stuff, and then like he's doing it now, where he's like doing what she does to pretend, and then he's like, and I faked it one time, and he's doing what he did,
Yeah.
to fake it. And then there's people there, and like one of the women there is like, can I get another, can I get another table, like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Please.
Yeah.
We can bring back check, please.
Well, the check, please, is from Spaceballs.
Is that what it's from?
Yes. Right? Is it from Spaceballs, or there's a check, please, in Spaceballs?
There is a check, please, in Spaceballs.
What's the first movie that does check, please?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it Spaceballs? We're gonna have to do some research on this, try and find out where check please comes from. I thought it was 90s sitcoms.
The issue with this though is you have to say something that's as good or better than I'll have what she's having, and it might be impossible to pull that off.
I mean that worked for so many reasons.
Yeah.
Like I mean even just her delivery, like she like.
Yeah.
Never mind the fact that it was unexpected coming from her. What's funny is that this movie may have started it. There's kind of a trope in comedies.
Yes.
Where whenever there's like an elderly woman in a movie.
Yes.
She's either like really creepy in a horror film, or she's wildly sexually inappropriate in a comedy.
Yes. Yes.
And I think When Harry Met Sally started this trope.
Yeah.
But what made that scene so funny is that like she wasn't like smiling or anything. Like she wasn't like, oh man, like I want to,
Yeah.
Like she was kind of like embarrassed to admit.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Like she didn't want to have to be like.
Yeah.
It's like I want to experience that too, because like she's still trying to maintain composure and be appropriate in public, but also she like secretly kind of on the down low, like give me what she was having.
Yeah, she's not aware that she's in on the joke or that there's a joke there. Yes. She's just saying it. You know. Yeah, and I think but I've definitely noticed the trope of you've got like the older person. It's usually the older woman, and she's just outlandishly crazy. Yeah. And it's like it's not it's
caricature.
Yeah, it's not it's not funny. I do have my own story about that though. My own personal story. I was at the I was at the grocery store. What? I was at the grocery store, and there's this like woman who's probably like 80 years old. Yeah. And she's like, oh, like, hey, do you know where this is? And I was like, oh yeah, it's like, on aisle like 5. And she goes, oh, thanks. And she grabs my butt. And I mean, it wasn't like a pat. It wasn't like a pat. It wasn't even like a pinch. It was, she grabbed the entire cheek. Like, like my entire right butt cheek, she had in her hand. She grabbed it and squeezed it. And then walked off. And I'm like, what do you do about that? What do you do about that when you're 6'1" and a 5 foot 80-year-old woman assaults you? You can't even say anything because you look like an idiot. Like, hey, lady. Hey, I'm not that kind of boy. What am I even supposed to do about it? But, the movie's
nice
still a little
overboard
with it. Yeah.
Like, you're not getting me to come home with you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You better buy me dinner first before you start getting frisky. But anyway, too many. Yeah, I've got too many women grabbing my butt stories. As it turns out. I didn't realize that
Yeah.
wasn't a thing until I will joke
No,
about
yeah.
it, and people will be like, "What? You've had women grab?" I'm like, "Yeah, like I have like three that I can remember, which means it's probably
Yeah.
happened another 100 times." Because when you're a dude, you don't like catalog this stuff, put it in the file
No, yeah.
cabinet. Like, oh, it's just something where you're like, all right, nothing, whatever. There's nothing I can do about it,
Yeah, no,
and
it's
then you
it's
just
happened
move
to me
on.
too. Never with an 80-year-old woman.
Okay, well, you
But
haven't lived. You have not lived until you have that 80-year-old hand,
yeah.
Great Depression strength.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like when an old man grabs your arm and his finger just finds that part like in between your
Yeah,
bicep and your
he's
tricep, like the most uncomfortable place possible to
like
grab
the
it.
boniest hand. There's like nothing left on it.
It's like,
Oh,
ow, let go, old
oh,
man. I'm not that kind of boy.
yeah. But
Um,
the line of this person would
yeah,
have to
yeah.
be very
The
good.
line, I think that it could still work
Yeah,
in the same way where,
yeah.
kind of like what you said. So
Yeah.
if Billy Crystal kind of
Oh,
starts out with like
yeah,
that being the line,
yeah. He does
and
that, and then maybe one of the people at the restaurant is like, "You don't get entertainment like this," and he says like some at Applebee's, because Benihana is like
okay,
that interactive, like he says
okay,
like, "Yeah, I can't get
okay,
entertainment like this at Applebee's."
yeah,
Like he's happy. Like the wife is maybe like, "Oh my God, I told you I didn't want to come here."
yeah,
And
yeah,
he's just like loving it. Like can't get that kind of, Applebee's doesn't
yeah.
entertain you like this place does,
That's not bad.
right?
Um, yeah, it's not bad. I
Yeah, it's
think
not
yeah,
bad.
it would need to be like real like punchy,
Yeah,
and kind of just like it's like I told you you should come here, you know. Or,
yeah,
it's got to be just like a real
yeah,
like quick kind of short line, that kind of gets that point across.
yeah,
But yeah, I
yeah.
think
It's
that's
it's something
doable.
like that. Yeah, I think it's something like that. I think. Do they have kids?
Harry and Sally.
Yeah, maybe they don't have
I
kids.
think they should have kids. I think it'll be difficult, um, to make it make sense. Like, why are they trying so hard to stay friends? Or is it just
Yeah,
that they stay friends because they can't help it? Kind of in the same way that like they kind of just kept seeing each other and then like
yeah.
became friends because they
You
just
could.
couldn't help it. Like they
Yeah,
just enjoy each other's company.
I don't know because I think you could have that. I think you could have the she goes on a date. They're divorced now, and he just
Yeah.
gives that famous line like when you realize that you don't want to spend the rest of your life with someone, you want to divorce them as soon as humanly possible. And then she gives him a call because she goes out on some date and she's like crying because it goes terrible, and she's like, I'm never gonna
Yeah.
meet anybody else. I thought like we were it, and we're just not it. Like they both agree
Yeah.
they're not it, and he's like, I know, I went on a terrible date recently too, and like they go through this whole thing where like now they're calling each other and they're watching some other old movie,
Yeah.
like The Wizard of Oz or something like that, and they're like talking about like how come Dorothy gets to go home at the end of this, and everything turns out
Yeah.
okay, like that kind
Yeah.
of thing, and it's
You know,
yeah,
I kind of hate to like
yeah,
to even kind of go down this road because I don't know if we should use it really to kind of push the story forward.
okay,
But Bruno Kirby and Carrie Fisher have passed away,
oh
and they're their best friends in the
yes,
movie.
yes,
Um, and that could be sort of an impetus for them too, where it's like we got
yeah,
divorced, but then like our friends passed away, and it kind of made
yeah,
us realize like you don't get to keep people around,
yeah,
you know.
yeah,
So it's like yeah, like maybe we're not in love with each other anymore, but like we still want to be in each other's lives while we're here.
yeah. Maybe they die before a lot of the trouble happens for them. Because maybe
Yeah,
like the fact that they've got this best friend couple
Yeah.
is keeping the whole universe together. And then they end up losing, Bruno Kirby or someone like that, and he
Yeah.
never really gets over it, and she doesn't fully understand. And then
Yeah.
she loses Carrie Fisher,
Carrie Fisher. Yeah.
and now she gets it, and now they don't really know what they have in common anymore because their favorite thing to do was to like spend time with this best friend couple that they have,
Yeah.
and that's like kind of their social group and all this other stuff, and they're both kind of
Yeah.
lost, and that kind of sparks the divorce where they don't understand why they're together anymore. They've lost it, and
Yeah.
because it was kind of them in the first place that made them realize it. Where like they're trying to
Yeah.
set each other up with the other person, you know. Hey, you're from
Yeah.
Wichita. So is Harry. Yeah,
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
you're from Wichita. Yeah, and then like that's it. That's all they can say about it, and they just because they're not interested in. But anyway,
Yeah.
but I think that was the thing that kind of propelled them to realize, like, oh, it's us. Like, we're the last people standing because we're actually the two people who should be together. And then when they lose that, they now forget that they're the two people that should be together, and they end up getting the divorce.
Yeah.
Only to realize that, like, you could still be friends. You could still have that.
Yeah.
That's what you've always had that was good.
Yeah. 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 That's not bad. That's not bad. And yeah, it is kind of the just kind of harping back to that men and women can't be friends thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it took me a little while to realize it, but I was wrong. You know.
Yeah.
So it took me 4 decades, before I realized, like, no, I'm wrong. Like, you can't be friends.
Yeah.
Um,
If they do have kids though, their kids now are like grown, which would
yeah,
make sense that like yeah, like they stayed together kind of, for the kids.
yeah,
And then once the
yeah,
kids leave the house and start their own stuff, they're kind of like, okay, now why are we still here? So I mean that
yeah,
makes sense, but it also makes sense, like yeah, like you were saying, why they would reconnect as well for the
yeah.
holidays.
Why? Yeah, it's like why they would make such an effort to reconnect.
Yeah,
It's like, we're not together anymore, but we're still family.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I mean, yeah, they get together for, I guess, Christmas. That's what makes sense. But then, yeah, like you got to have the New Year's Eve kind of aspect, that element in there somewhere.
yeah.
I don't know if there's a speech he can give, really.
I
You're like,
think there
you're
is.
awful.
No, I think there is a. Well, I think there is a speech if they meet for New Year's, or if they get together for Christmas because they have to because of the family.
Yeah,
Then for New Year's, maybe she's got like a date and she ends up in like kind of like a ball, but the date falls through. And
yeah,
he finds out from the daughter, who's like, Mom's spending New Year's at this place alone because this jerk stood her up. And
yeah,
he shows up. And then
yeah.
he's like, and then he kind of says something similar, which is that
I
like,
you know he
you're my best friend. I'm here because you're my
yeah,
best friend. You've always been my best friend. You'll always be my best friend.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he could give the same speech,
Oh,
and he
yeah.
hates all those things about her.
Yes.
Like, I hate that
Yeah.
crinkle in your nose that you get whenever you look at me like I'm crazy. Like, I hate that, and I hate this.
Does
It's like, I
does
hate
Meg
all those
Ryan,
things.
with all of her plastic surgery, still have the crinkle, or has it been smoothed out?
I don't know. But he hates all those things, but
Yeah.
he loves, like, but he
Yes.
still loves her. Like, I still
Yeah.
love you, though. Like, you're my best friend. You always have been. So yeah, I mean, he could give the same speech and just
Yeah.
hate all those things because
I
he's
think
sick of it.
it does. You know, I think there's always the concern that it loses some of its charm, um,
Oh yeah,
because they're older and it's the second movie, and the
yeah,
the energy level is going to be lower
yeah,
than when they're in their like
yeah.
20s and 30s.
That's a good point. I mean, generally you don't make something like this a love
Yes.
story.
Yes.
Um, I suppose what you could have is a subplot. Oh, this might not be bad actually.
Okay.
If you had a subplot where it's like, them kind of whatever realization it is that they have, where it's like, we didn't work, but we're still like best friends.
Yes.
Um, but at least like our kids found the right people. At least our kids found that right, that person. And then like one of their kids is like talking about getting a divorce,
Yeah.
and they're like, no.
Yeah.
And like that could maybe be like sort of more of an impetus too of them like kind of coming together, is like coming
Yeah.
together and being like, no, like we got divorced because we weren't right for each other. It's like, but like you're talking about divorce because you're mad at them, and that's not the same thing.
Yeah. Yes.
So like there can still be a love story there, and there
Yeah.
can still be kind of like a redemptive love story. It's just not theirs anymore. It's their kid.
Yeah. Yes. And that could be, yeah, and you could have like a powerful scene there too, where like both parents are kind of talking to them, and maybe it's Christmas before the whole New
Yeah,
Year's thing. And they're like, we got married because we were best friends. And we
yeah,
already kind of went through the dating process and just landed on each other, you know?
yeah,
And we got divorced because like we just weren't right for each other to begin with, you know?
yeah,
And then
yeah,
like one of their kids could be like, yeah, but like you didn't stay best friends either, you know, that
yeah,
like the thing that
yeah,
started it. And then that can kind of be like, just like leave it at that. Then during New
yeah,
Year's now it kind of makes sense where they're both realizing like, no, we still are best friends. We just have to get
yeah,
past the fact that we got divorced in order to
yeah,
rekindle the fact that we're best friends. And that's like the thing that
yeah,
was
yeah,
always good about our relationship, was that we're best friends. We just weren't romantically right for each other.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I actually think there's something there.
There might be something there.
Yeah. Is
Yeah,
it a
and
good
I don't.
idea to make this movie, or is it a bad idea?
I don't know. I don't know. It's I always lean towards no,
Yes.
um, because it's like it's so hard to make a sequel to a classic like this without it
Yeah.
taking away from the original. Especially if like generally I'm not a fan of if there's a love story, the first movie, like the entire point is getting to that point where they're finally
Yes.
together, and it's like,
Yes.
yeah. And then the second movie, like they're having trouble because like you need conflict, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I usually hate that because it's like, well, that disrupts, it takes away from all of the journey that we went through in the first
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
So when Harry divorces Sally, I think it's a funny idea,
Yeah.
but I do worry about that. Like, does it take away from that journey that you
I
went through?
I don't think it does, so long as you approach it with the same attitude that the first movie had in their relationship. So now you're
Yeah,
showing their relationship in this, they've been married for a long time, their kids are grown, they're comfortable with each other.
yeah,
They find each other annoying, and you're still doing that. It's still the playful banter. It's the
yeah,
like, do you have to pull the covers off of me? Like
yeah,
both the covers off of me, like in the middle
yeah,
of the night, so that I got like, do I have to go to war with you every night to get just a scrap of covers, you know?
yeah,
And she's
yeah,
like, I'm cold. He's like, well, why don't we turn the thermos up? I don't like the way it smells when the thermos is turned up. And it's this playful banter that just keeps keeps
yeah,
happening back and forth. He's like, I had the guy come the other month, and he cleaned out the vents. It smells fine. Like there's
yeah,
a smell. you
yeah,
know? He's like, and it's like that type of thing where they're just playfully bantering with each other, and then they're like, I don't know if like I want to do this anymore. And she's like, I don't think I want to do it either. You know?
yeah,
He's like, how are the
yeah.
kids gonna handle it? Well, John will be fine.
Right.
Sandra might take it kind of tough. I don't know how her and Dan are doing. Like this, and they're doing the same thing they were doing before, which is driving each other nuts. Only
Yeah,
instead of heading towards each other, now they're heading away from each other.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And I think there's something there because it's not there's no anger. So long as you don't have like an anger
Yeah,
that didn't exist in the first movie, that where you're like,
yeah,
they're not really those people.
yeah. It might work for this movie uniquely for this movie
Yeah,
because When Harry Met Sally was such a unique romantic comedy. Um, not just in that uh, it was just different in general, but also like it follows their relationship over the course of a decade.
yes,
You know, like they
yeah,
get to know each other in like college,
yeah,
and then they become best friends like 5 years later, and then like 5 years after that is when they finally like talk about getting into a relationship with each other. Um, so yeah, it is kind of unique in that way where it would maybe feel like no, it's still their story, and this is
yeah,
just another part of their story, and like we just kind of keep telling it, and it doesn't really take away from the first movie that much.
yes, yes.
It
Which
might
is
work.
weird. Yeah, I think it would work. I'm not sure if it should be made, but I think it could be made, and I think it could be fun if it was made. That's the way I feel
Yeah,
about it. Yeah.
yeah, I agree.
Okay. Can we talk about Jingle All the Way?
Yes,
Another holiday classic,
another
and
holiday classic.
turning Jingle All the Way into what it should have been in the first place, an action film. And what does that look like?
Yes.
You know what's the weird thing about Jingle All the Way? It's got Anakin Skywalker in it, right?
Is that who's it? Is that who's?
I think so.
Wait.
The kid in it is Anakin, is Jake Lloyd.
You're right. Okay, yeah, you're
Right.
right.
So Jake Lloyd is in it.
That's
Okay.
Jake Lloyd. Yes.
There's another movie. This is a little off topic, but there's another movie called Real Steel that has a kid in it who is not Jake Lloyd that looks exactly like Jake Lloyd.
Okay.
Have you seen this
Okay.
thing? Anyway,
No, this
I
one I'm
thought
not
that was
familiar
weird.
with.
But yeah, these Jake Lloyds are just running around all over the place. But Jake Lloyd is in Jingle All the Way. I think
Yeah.
it should have been an action film
It's
because it's got
just yeah,
Arnold in it.
Schwarzenegger
Yeah. Why
action
did they go
film.
that route?
Why didn't they go that route?
Yeah.
I think I don't know. I think Schwarzenegger likes to do things that he's told he could never do, you
Yeah.
know? Um, and he has that attitude of like he wanted to be an actor, and they're like, you'll never make it with a weird name and the weird accent, and he's like, I want to be the highest paid actor of all time. And this is
Yeah.
the kind of stuff he was saying before he made Conan the Barbarian. And then he finally became that person when he did Mr. Freeze. um, he said the same thing with comedy. He wanted to do comedy.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to do comedy with him, and he's like, well, then I'm going to do comedy. And so he did Twins. So this might have been like, I want to make a Christmas movie. I want to make family. I want a family movie. They're like,
Yeah.
you can't do that. That's not you. And he's like, yes, it
Yeah.
is. I do it all the time. Ah. So like
Yeah.
he makes this Turbo Man movie,
Yeah.
probably because somebody told him he'd never be able to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. You're not a family movie guy. But what does the action film look like if you turned it into more of an action film? Does the premise stay the same, where there's a guy going for the last Turbo Man toy for his son, and he's
I
just,
think, yeah.
but it's,
I think it could still be like real, kind of like tongue in cheek. Like it's still a
yeah,
comedy, but
yeah,
it's just like an all out action. You know,
yes,
I don't know if you keep Sinbad in that case. Like you might need someone who's a little more like action villain.
yeah.
Could you keep Sinbad? You might be able to keep Sinbad.
You might be able to keep Sinbad if you had them kind of being a little bit more like teaming up, because they kind of team up.
Yeah.
But you would need, I think, an actual villain in the film.
You replace him with Sinbad the
Yeah.
pirate.
Do you just mix
And then...
this with the Running Man? Is that what this is? It's just him and
this...
Sinbad running from store
Yeah.
to store, just bashing people, trying to
Yeah.
get this toy that they cannot
Yeah.
get.
Yeah.
And
So
like,
and then yeah, Arnold is just like he's more of a tough guy than a family man, like how
yeah,
he usually plays it.
yes,
So like this guy's coming over and like hitting on his wife,
yeah,
and he's
oh,
like, put the cookie down.
yes,
No, and like
yes,
it's more like
yeah,
threatening.
yeah. He beats
Beats
the
the
guy
crap
up.
out of him. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a yeah. I don't know if it's tough for me because I'm just like, do you just set it in some like weird apocalyptic sci-fi future?
I was thinking
Yeah,
like something not apocalyptic, but I was thinking
yeah,
like the same thing. Or it's just like it's almost like Escape from New York,
Yeah,
like where it's these Black Friday like sales, and he's just going through with like a shotgun
yeah,
and just like blowing people away, fighting off a bunch of Santas.
yeah. It's just an anything goes style world.
Yeah, just an all-out brawl.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I kind of like that actually. Like that's just the way the world is.
What if it's like a Mad Max Thunderdome style thing where like the victor gets the Turbo Man toy and you got to go through like kind of like a gauntlet of different style things.
I
You
like
know.
that as like a possible like something that he goes through, one of the
Yes.
obstacles that he goes
Yes.
through.
So he can't get it at one store and he goes to like another place
He
and
goes
they're
to
like,
like
"We
the
have one,
Thunderdome.
but you have to
Yeah.
go through the gauntlet."
Yeah.
And like he's going through the gauntlet, like and he's got the guy Dynamo with like the lightning bolts coming out of his hands,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he's got to fight. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, he's just
Yeah. Yeah.
beating people to a pulp so he can get the Turbo Man toy for his son.
Yeah. And then like him actually being in the Turbo Man suit could be
Oh
like
yeah,
a really kind of cool action scene with him in the jetpack instead of what we got, which was about 5 minutes
what?
of
Yeah,
Arnold Schwarzenegger going,
yeah.
oh!
Why did that scene last so long?
I
He's
don't know.
flying around in the Turbo Man jetpack. He is doing it for like 3 minutes, right? Like it is a
Yes,
long
yes.
scene.
The you hated that scene so much
Yeah, yeah,
that like and we have a cousin who loves that movie, and we used to go over to watch a TV show with that cousin every single weekend, and without fail, every single time he'd go to turn on the TV show, and it would instead be the jetpack scene from from Jingle All the Way,
yeah, yeah. He
and you
showed me
never
that one.
saw it coming.
Yeah, every time. Uh, what I would do is send. I'd always send a link like, "Hey, have you seen this video yet? Like, here's the link," and it
Yeah.
would be Rebecca Black's Friday. It's
Yes.
Friday. I
Yeah.
would pull
You
that
were
one on
doing
everybody.
that.
I
You
did
were
it for
doing that
years.
before, like before Rick rolling was a thing.
Yeah, before Rick Roll was a
Um,
thing, I was sending links to dumb things to people
yeah. So
that they
we'd
didn't
send
know.
links back and forth, and then like
Yeah,
you just slip it in there. What about this one? And like you did it so often that it got to the point that our cousin like memorized the the
yeah,
URL code.
yes, they had the
So like
URL
he'd
code.
see it and
Yeah,
he'd be like, no,
no,
that
yeah, I'd have to
that's
find it under
Rebecca
different
Black's
URL.
Friday.
Yeah, I'd have to find it under different URLs to send it to people because I sent it so much. They knew it. They knew it by heart. Uh, is it stay the same sort of like format, um, where he's going for a toy, or is it something bigger that he's going for that makes it make more sense? Why this is so much more like Commando as opposed to a kid Jingle All the Way movie?
I think that depends. It depends on if it's still at its root a comedy, and
Yeah,
it's just shot like an Arnold action movie. Kind of like the Last Action Hero,
yeah,
like like he'll like punch a car window out, or like he kicks the guy in the crotch, and the guy like kind of flies up in the air, like
yeah,
it's a little cartoony.
yeah,
Um, so like yeah, if it's still a comedy, then I think he's still going after a toy, and it's just like hardcore kind of Mad Max, Escape from New York, Escape from L.A.
yeah.
And if it's just an all-out action and there's no comedy, then yeah, I think we'd have to change the MacGuffin. It's not a toy anymore.
Yeah.
Um, it's got to be something else, and maybe it's still Turbo Man. Maybe it's like the actual costume, like the thing that he wears that
Oh,
has a jetpack on it.
yeah.
It has a working jetpack. It's incredible technology.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it could even just be that.
Yeah, because if he's going after that, then it does make more sense that it's like an action film. Because
Yeah,
he'd be having to like break into a place and actually beat people up in order to
yeah,
get the suit,
yeah,
so that he can show up as Turbo Man for Christmas for his son, who loves
yeah,
Turbo Man.
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Yeah, there could be some cool Turbo Man stuff.
Yeah, it's yeah. I think it's hard to actually think of it like as an action film when you're only thinking of it in terms of there's a guy trying to get this toy.
Yeah.
But
No, yeah. I'm thinking of it kind of the way, like, I feel like it would just be shot, like the way that Kindergarten Cop opens.
yeah,
Like when
yeah,
he's still kind of that grizzled cop, and he's like,
yes,
he's got the gun, and he still looks, kind of hardcore.
yeah.
Um,
Oh,
it's just the whole movie shot like that.
yes. So that could kind of be it though. Like you start out like that, like Kindergarten Cop.
Yeah.
He's busting some place. And then
Yeah.
his precinct is like, hey, we're gonna have one of the police officers dress up as Turbo Man this year, and he's
Yeah.
gonna go visiting the different houses. And he's like, not interested.
Yeah.
Then he goes home and his kid's like, did you hear that like Turbo Man's gonna come over for Christmas? Like how cool is that? And now he's kind
Yeah.
of like, oh, maybe I should do it, like,
Yeah.
because my son's totally into this guy. Then somebody steals the costume,
Yeah.
so he's got to go out finding this guy who stole the costume. So he's actually like on the hunt for Turbo Man, just like he is in the original Jingle All the Way. Except this is
Yeah.
him going after like some hardcore like druggie where they're like they stole, uh, you know, they stole 50 pounds of heroin. He's like, oh, jeez. And the Turbo Man costume. The Turbo Man costume! Like lifts the guy up. Like, who is it? And now
Yeah.
he's got to go after this guy. And his
Yeah.
partner is Sinbad. And they're like
It's
both going after it
burgers.
because Sinbad's like, I promised my kid about this Turbo Man too. Like, we got to go get this guy.
Yeah.
So, like, they're going after this dude. Meanwhile, Phil Hartman's trying to, have relations with his wife. He's got to go home and beat this guy up, teach him a
Yeah.
lesson.
Oh, there's cookies.
It is. I will say this about Jingle All the Way. I do think it's worth watching just for the
Yeah.
social relevance because there's like quotes and things like that in it that you're gonna hear,
Yeah.
and
Okay,
it's nice
yeah.
knowing
It's
where
like
it came
culturally
from.
significant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Other than that, I don't think, unless you're maybe like 10 or under, right? I don't think it's a great movie, Jingle All the
No,
Way.
yeah. I agree with that. Like there are Christmas movies that like I grew up with, and I love,
Yeah,
and then I can rewatch them as an adult, and it's
yeah,
like, wow, that was really good. And then there's some movies that like I'll watch as an adult, and I'm surprised by how good it is. Um, and like I kind of felt that way with A Muppet Christmas Carol. I was like, wow, like this is Michael Caine has turned in probably the best performance of Ebenezer Scrooge that I've seen.
his
Uh,
career.
and yeah, yeah, yeah. But like, he's so good. Like he's so
Yeah,
good in that movie, and I'm like, this is actually a great Christmas Carol movie.
yeah,
But then yeah, there's a movie like Jingle All the Way where like I watch it as an adult, and I'm like, man, I could barely get through this movie.
yeah. It's.
Like it's not great.
I mean, I hate
Sorry.
to say it, but I feel the same way about Tim Allen's The Santa Claus.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I
Like,
like it better than Jingle All the Way.
okay, yeah. I don't know which one
I
I would rather watch. Who's in that one?
I watched it.
Is Jonathan Taylor Thomas in that one
No, no.
as the kid?
It's just he
He's
plays
just
his
his
kid
kid
in
in
everything.
every movie. He's in Galaxy Quest as his kid. Dad, what are we gonna do? Get out of here! Why are you always following me?
Jonathan Taylor Thomas was great. He was a great child actor.
Yeah,
Um, no, yeah, I like the Santa Claus. I agree with you though. It's not like top tier.
yeah,
Um, and gotta be honest. A Christmas Story.
yeah.
It's
You're not
just okay.
into. Yeah, it's weird. I think A Christmas Story is a great movie. I'm not one of those people who likes watching it every year though, because it's a downer for
Yeah,
me, and
yeah,
I don't like feeling crummy.
yeah.
I don't
That
really like
I
feeling
think that's what
crummy.
it is. I
Yeah.
think that's what it is. It's like I want to watch a Christmas movie that makes me feel happy that it's Christmas,
Yes.
and that movie doesn't really do that. Like it kind of makes you feel a little like, oh, like that
Yeah,
didn't like really work out. Maybe
yeah,
it's a good movie to watch when it's not Christmas. I should try watching it in July or something.
yeah.
See if
Watch
that
it.
helps.
Yeah, watch it during one of those crummy months, and
Yeah.
see if that makes you feel any better about it. Um. Okay, so I I do have a bad Christmas movie for you.
Okay.
Um, this one's I'm a little nervous to say it because it's a little out there. But here we go. Are you ready for it?
I'm
Okay.
ready. I have not heard this
So
before.
so here's my bad Christmas movie idea.
Yeah.
So Mrs. Claus has passed away recently.
Okay.
The trouble is though that Santa Claus needs to remarry because, and this is there's a timetable here, because
Okay.
the elves only have a 1 month lifespan. They only live during the month of December. The elves, and Mrs.
Yeah.
Claus is the one every year who births the elves through the love of her and Santa Claus. So he has to find. This is basically like the Santa Claus meets the Bachelor. Santa Claus has to find a new Mrs. Claus. Otherwise, Christmas next year will be canceled. Good luck.
What? What the hell?
Right? Make that good.
Oh yeah, you're right. That is a bad movie
It's
idea.
bad,
So
right?
okay, we've done this a couple of times,
Yes.
and the point of the bad movie idea is
Yes.
we're coming up with an idea that is purposefully bad,
Yes.
and the goal is to try and make it watchable. Like try and make it so an audience can actually enjoy this movie.
Yeah.
Okay. So this all right, this is kind of weird.
Right.
Because whenever the idea comes out, it's always like, what is the hit my microphone? Get out of here. It's always like, what is the genre? What is the genre that makes this
Yes.
work?
Yeah.
And oddly enough, the first genre that came to mind was mockumentary.
Oh, that's not bad.
Right? So it's
Yeah.
shot like Spinal Tap.
Oh, yes.
That might work.
That might work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we could do a
Yes.
mockumentary about Santa Claus and like
Yeah.
his search for love, and that way it will feel like a reality dating
Yes.
TV show.
Yes. Yes.
And yeah, and it's just like, and it's interview
Yeah.
style, and he's talking
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
Mrs. Claus and like how it works, and this is
Uh-huh. Yeah.
this is what happens, and and that's why with the cookies, and like we could even try and come up with like a lore, and like there's a reason for the
Yes.
milk and cookies, and we can come up with that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's like I don't know what it is like how he goes about trying to find women. It might be kind of funny like if he's like I haven't dated for like 800 years,
Yeah.
and so he's like getting into women's houses through their
Yeah.
chimney, like
Yes.
and they're like and they like
Yeah.
mace him or something.
Yes. Yeah. And like he can go on a first date and then be like, so like, how are you feeling about this? Cause like we gotta like, we gotta be making a decision soon.
Yeah.
Like you gotta pop out at least a half dozen elves before like before like March or whatever, or
Oh
December.
man.
And then like you can have Rob Reiner as the like cameraman interviewer who's like maybe leave that
Yeah.
one, don't talk
Yeah.
about that one. And then
So
Santa
yeah.
Claus could be like, yeah, my last wife I bought off of a poor farmer for 2 cows because it was like 800 years ago.
Yeah.
Like
So
can
it
you
used
still
to be
do
cookies
that?
and goat milk back
Can
then.
you still buy a wife? He's all like going on those like websites where
Like
they're like
not in
trying to buy
America. Yeah.
but they're trying to
Like a
buy
mail
some
order bride.
mail order bride.
um, yeah, yeah. Wow, this inadvertently kind of turned into a Rob Reiner episode.
Yeah.
So he did When Harry Met Sally as well, and then he did Spinal Tap. So yeah, he's like, Rob Reiner's the documentarian.
Yeah, he's doing the Santa Claus meets the
Yeah.
Bachelor movie.
Yeah, played by Tim Allen. Um,
Yeah, Tim Allen actually would be a good choice.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he'd
Tim
be
Allen's
so
good.
mad. He'd be so mad if you if you told him
Like, I
about it.
don't want to keep playing Santa Claus.
Yeah, we got
Uh,
a Christmas movie for you. Ah,
for like it's Christmas with the Cranks too. He's like, ah, like I was just kidding, just kidding. Um, yeah. I'm not. I'm not sure where to take it though. Like, we'd
yeah,
have to have him actually find somebody.
yeah. I think he does
Um,
find somebody.
but yeah, like I don't know if it's a love story really. I don't know if it's a romance. Like it might be
I
kind of more
yeah.
like he finds someone who's kind of straight to business. Okay, there's two ways I could think of this going.
Okay.
Where one is that the wife is very like kind of stringent, strict, and like, oh yeah, like we have to do this, and like
Yeah.
kind of treats it like a business transaction.
Yeah.
And she's like more into it and more serious about it than Santa is. Um, and Santa's kind of like, okay, like I guess this is it. Like I guess this is the one, like this
Yeah.
is Claus, like great. The other way to go about it is the girl is like nuts about Christmas,
Yes.
and she's like way on board with this because she like can't stand the idea of there not being a Christmas. So
Yeah.
she's like real like happy peppy, kind of like almost a caricature of like those girls that are that like dress up in November, like the day after Thanksgiving, and they're like in
Yeah.
full Christmas garb. It's like one of
Yeah.
those girls.
Yes. So she's like super. Yeah. He finds somebody who's super into Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think. I feel like the mockumentary
Yeah.
negates this even being a bad movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, like really
Yeah.
well. It negates it really well, and like I feel like yeah, I think the main thing is the execution of when you're finding out why it's so important for him to find a new Mrs. Claus before December, because by December they got to be having those elf babies,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
their whole litter of elf babies dies after Christmas when they're
Yeah.
no longer needed, and they go
Yeah.
through the
Yeah.
whole process again every single year, you
Yeah.
know, and it's like yeah, I think finding this out is like uh the execution of how you find this out has got to be really on point.
Yeah.
Of like,
Yeah.
it's like, does the audience find out when the whatever that first date is finds out, the first date that's going well finds out what she's getting into, and she's like horrified by this.
Yeah, it could also be when the documentarian finds out.
Yeah.
So like he thinks it's just like, oh, Santa's trying to find a new bride,
Yes.
and I'm here
Yeah.
for the ride, and like he kind of, so he can either explain it to her, or he can like show almost like a training video, like
Yeah.
for when you join a new job, and it's like a
Yes.
safety video,
Yes.
and it's like like it's produced. And
Yeah.
it's like, and then the elves come out, and it's like, like a
Yeah.
little like stick figure lady, and it's just like elves like coming out. It's
Yeah.
like, and then once Christmas is over, and it's like has like a buzz saw like cut all their heads off. And it's like they're like we don't need them anymore. Like it
Yeah.
just kind of like shoves them off to the side. So yeah, like we could do something like that, and where like the first girl that he goes out with like finds out, and the documentarian's finding this out for the first time
Yeah.
too.
Wait a second. Do they kill the elves? Or do the elves just disappear after Christmas, like in some magical way? They just like disintegrate, like into pixie dust or something.
I think it's funny if maybe like they die naturally,
Yeah.
but it's extremely painful. So Santa puts them out of their misery.
Yeah.
So it's just like
Yes.
No, we usually
Yes.
kill them because like the
Yeah.
alternative's way
Yes.
worse.
The alternative, and then they have like some found footage of an elf like explode or something.
Yeah.
Just explodes into pixie dust. You know? Santa,
Yeah.
help! It's happening! Like, oh my gosh!
Sprinkles.
Yeah.
It's like it's delicious, but it's really painful for the elf.
Yes. Uh,
Say it's just mercy killing elves.
yeah. I
Gosh.
yeah, I think it's definitely the documentarian has to find out when the audience finds out, or it's
Yeah.
the that first date that's going well finds out when the audience finds out, and
Yeah.
there's just like a like, because then it's like there's this point where you're like, oh, Santa isn't doing so good in the dating market because he's whatever 2,000 years old or whatever,
Right.
and he's
Yeah.
not used to this, and he's terrible at all this stuff. And then he finally finds someone where you're like, this is going well, and you're like kind of rooting for him. And then you find out what
Yeah.
you're going to be getting into, and you're like, this is going to be impossible now
Yeah.
for him.
Yeah.
Like this one person, the one person where it looked like this was going well is just completely like jumped ship when she finds out that like you're going to be giving birth to like 1,000 elves every every year. No, thank you. And this process continues all the way up till the day before
Yeah.
Christmas.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what? The whole month of December? Well, not the whole month, just all the way
Yeah.
up
It's just the
till
first
Christmas.
24 days.
Yeah. And how many elves?
Yeah.
The record is
Yeah.
2,721 elves. Yeah.
Yeah, man. You're right. That was a bad idea, but I think
But as a mockumentary, it's
think
great.
yeah, I
Yes.
think it works. I think we can actually make kind of a funny movie there.
Yeah. And you could even have like a bachelor style scene where he's like got 25 women who are interested in him.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? But then like they kind of find out what they're getting into, and now there's like 3 women left.
Yeah,
You know?
they're all just kind of like slowly leaving. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Um,
Picks the only one
how
that's like stays.
how does it end?
Um,
Does Christmas get canceled, or does he actually find somebody?
um, that's a good question. I mean, it could be that he finds someone, or it could be that like we get to that December and there's no
Yeah.
Christmas. And there could be some parallels there. We can kind of have it show how people feel in December without
Yeah.
Christmas, and
Yeah.
just like like there's just kind of this whole like um, almost like widespread depression. Um, and the documentarian's kind of like, so that's it, no more. And he's like, yeah, we'll try again next year.
Yeah.
And the documentarian's like, what? Oh, like I thought that like we had a deadline. It's
Yeah.
like, no, yeah, we had a deadline this Christmas. It's like,
Yeah.
like as soon as I find a new Mrs. Claus, like, yeah,
Yes.
we'll start up
Yeah.
Christmas again.
Yeah, we missed Christmas in 1782.
Right.
But we've been going strong ever since.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's no big. That's actually a good ending. That it's like, oh, it's it's no big deal. It didn't really have to happen. I was just trying to make it happen this year.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, you hate to miss one. You hate to miss
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
It's just been a long time since I've missed.
Erase the thing off the board. Put 0 days.
Yeah.
You know?
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works. I think that works pretty good. I think that those are some good pages.
Yeah.
So until next time, I'll see you later, brother.
Later, brother.